What's the biggest frick up you ever made that was fixed before anyone knew about it? Dropped a financial client's live payroll database. All of it gone. All at 17.15 on a Friday. As the stench of death lingered in with my hands shaking and sweaty and knowing my weekend had just been ruined, I went digging on the server to find that backup the client did in our system 10 minutes prior. I cannot describe in words the feeling that came over me as it restored successfully and the system worked fine by 17:25. Still to this day the problems I face at work I can mostly laugh off because of that one time. I'm a freelance app developer. I was preparing to submit an app to the store for this client. The build was ready and I was just about to upload it. I'll just install it and do a final check, I think, and I'm glad I was paranoid about it. The app name was something like Sigfglg. My cat used to have a bad habit of jumping on my keyboard when I wasn't looking. He actually managed to send a Skype message to a client once, full of gibberish. I was in the process of training him that he's not allowed on the desk. I can only imagine what my client's reaction would have been if the app got released with that name. The day I learned how to take apart a VCR and put it back together again will be forever in my memory. I was 14, and like most 14-year-olds, any excuse to yank it is enough. Found my dad's porn stash, home alone for an hour. Let's do this. After about 10 minutes of my dad's well-worn 90s bootleg porno, the tape decided to jam. Cue me trying to eject the tape and making things worse. Frick. Let's just say the blood wasn't in my brain at this point. Grabbed a screwdriver and disassembled the VCR. Carefully removed the tape without breaking the ribbon and wound it back so it looked into shade. I put the VCR back together and re-hid the porno so my dad wouldn't find out, and I never was questioned about it. The biggest kicker about it all is that my dad is no longer with us, and as an adult now I'd love to tell him this story as he would find it hilarious imagining me in a flat panic trying to repair a VCR mid-wank. The city's newspaper, and one of my jobs was to add up all the orders for the next day's papers so they could print what they needed. Once I made a huge error and they printed off thousands of extra papers. I was very lucky. They covered up for me, quietly disposed of the extra papers, and didn't tell the boss. I was just asked very nicely to never ever do it again. I used to work at a call center for a popular gift company. This one couple calls up and says we need to cancel our order. I look it up and tell them Ups already has the order to deliver it. They tell me you don't understand. We are sending this to our son and his wife. We accidentally put his ex-wife's name on the card. It will ruin Christmas if they receive this gift. I was finally able to call Ups and get them to not deliver the package. Not my screw up, but dang. I got my parents' car impounded before going to work. I managed to find the people who called to tow it. I found the guy who towed the car itself. He gave me a ride to the impound lot. It cost me around $500 to get it back. No one ever knows. Narrator, but someone did know. I spilled red wax all over cream carpet when I was about 16. Then carefully cleaned it all up using printer paper and an iron. You lay the paper over the wax, iron on low heat, and it transfers the wax from the carpet to the paper. What made it harder was that my mum, one of those really particular, house-proud people, was napping in the next room the whole time. Had to do all of it without waking her up. When we moved out, there was a tiny stain still there, but she never picked up on it until then. Friends and I decided one night, at 14 years of age, it would be a fun idea to borrow one of our mum's cars. It was the first night I drove a car, and the first time I crashed a car. Drove it home, and cleaned the dirt off, painted a rock blue, and threw it at the mangled bumper. Friend's mum reportedly came home that day with a story about how some jerk must have hit her in the parking lot at work and driven off. It wasn't until about 7 years later she apparently turned to him one night and said, "Hey, you know how my car got damaged a while back? Was that you?" He confirmed, and she replied, "Oh well, at least insurance covered it." Always growing up my mom told me not to overload the dryer. It was one of those fancy expensive ones and she didn't want it to break. 4 years she said this, and I never took her seriously. Then one time, after I moved out, they had me house sit for a weekend. I brought literally all my laundry and washed it in a single load. Stupid, I know. Ended up breaking the dryer. They were coming home the next day, Sunday. I went full repairman and took the entire thing apart, or at least getting the whole front off and getting into the meat of the thing. Turned out I snapped the band. Called everywhere and no one had the band. Ended up finding this random store downtown that specialized in washer and dryer repairs. Went in and bought a band similar to what I needed. Went home, put it on, and put everything back together. Took up my entire Saturday. It's been 3 years and my mom still doesn't know. When I was in high school, my parents had a VW Golf and a station wagon. I had keys to both cars, although I normally drove the Golf, because it was a GTI and a hoot to drive. Our local mall had the movie theater, arcade, and food court all near one particular entrance, which was normally my preferred place to park. One Saturday I didn't have much going on, so I got up, drove the station wagon to the mall, played some games, tooled around for a bit, hung out with friends, then got in my car and went home. When I got home both my parents were gone, which was weird, but I thought, it's cool. I can watch what I want to on TV. So I grabbed a bag of chips and started watching some movie on HBO. About an hour or so into the movie I realized, hey, wait a minute, I didn't drive the Golf to the mall, but I drove the Golf home. Oh crap. I realized my parents had driven to the mall in the Golf and used the exact same parking area I used. When I got out of the mall I must have seen the Golf, just got in it, and absent-minded driven home. My parents were still at the mall, had been for over an hour, which was a record for my dad, and I was certain my father was in the midst of calling the cops to report a stolen car. I jumped into the Golf, drove as quickly as I could back to the mall. Had my mother seen the way I drove, she would have killed me. By some miracle the exact spot my parents had parked in was available, so I parked the car. I then walked the couple rows over and got into the station wagon and drove home. My parents came home like 30 minutes later. I asked them how the mall was, and my father started bitching about how my mother made him shop for a new bedroom set, or whatever. But other than that, it was fine. I didn't tell them that story until I was into my late 20s. Started an apprenticeship in it, and was woefully underqualified. I was given the responsibility of maintaining the intranet site for our whole department, obviously given a role that's internal, so I couldn't frick up customer facing things. They underestimated my power. On one cheery Friday evening when half my department had gone home early I was experimenting on the site, creating and deleting test pages in a hidden area. I got 2 different delete buttons on the same page, mixed up and accidentally deleted the whole site. There is no undo. I didn't have access to the changelog. What I did have was another tab open with the same site on it, in edit mode, that I forgot I had. I hit save changes on that page and voila, everything is back. After changing my pants I went home and spent the whole weekend terrified that my boss would find out. They never did. Fast forward 2 years, I've been training hard and now I design systems for our staff. Never fricked up that bad again. Yet. Was taking care of my neighbor's bird and he flew out the house as I opened the door and went over and behind it. I shat bricks cause she really loves the bird and had it for a while. Heard him chirping on the trees behind the house and kept calling him Mango, Mango, Mango. He came to the windowsill and I lured him in with food. Best believe I didn't let him out of his cage after that. My mom is a very soft-spoken, gentle woman. Only heard her curse once in my life. Very old-fashioned, super kind. So innocent. She's amazing. As a teenager I was a rebellious little shit always up to no good. I had a best friend whose parents were super religious. We met at Christian private school and we would get into mischief with each other. One time we were out around 2 AM and went to another friend's house we hadn't talked to in years that went to the Christian school with us. We knocked on his window and asked him to sneak out, but he said he couldn't. He then in turn apparently told his parents about it, and his parents contacted my friend's parents. If we got into any more trouble together we weren't going to be allowed to hang out anymore. So one night my friend and I rode one bicycle about 10 miles to go to this girl's house, taking turns sitting on the handlebars. We had a reason for wanting to go, but we didn't stay long, so after a long arduous journey, we set out on our return trip. Not 5 minutes after embarking, a cop pulls up and stops us. It's around 4:25 in the morning and I hadn't even thought about curfew being a thing. He called up both our parents, and my mom came to pick us up. He wasn't able to reach my friend's parents, so he left a message on the machine. Knowing this was the inevitable, forced termination of our friendship, I convinced my mother to drive to his house on a covered mission. He lived out in the Bohemians, so when we arrived at his house, she had to turn off her lights and drive stealthily down his country road of a driveway. He snuck inside while his parents slept, deleted the message off the machine, and we escaped scot-free. Instead of charging a customer's credit card for $150, I charged $15,000, and it went through. I ran up to a private office and immediately called the issuing bank, told them what happened, and they made it as if nothing happened. So, I work in a CNC workshop, and we often engrave stuff. This particular guy wanted a nice wooden jewelry box for their wedding anniversary with a custom message he emailed me. For some reason he chose to give the box to his wife at the workshop. Not the most romantic place I can think of, but whatever. Wife starts to look confused and tear up. You don't remember the date? Guy turns pale, looks at me, says, no, I'm sure it's a mistake. Me, no, I've copied it straight. Can't be Ryun. Wait a minute. OMG. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. I will redo it right away. No need to pay. Please accept it as a gift. Wife gets angry a bit at me, but they leave with a different box and the correct date. Guy comes back next day and pays triple the original price without a word. You have a message from the close call man. Like and sub for nothing in return.